are here with Jim Gaffigan. How are you today, sir?
Thank you for having me.
Of course, we are surrounded by your face.
How awkward. But that's you guys did that on purpose, I guess.
That's our thing. So you have two films at the LA Film Festival, which they could not be more different movies. And I'm wondering what it means for you personally at this point in your career to not only be the lead in two films at this film festival, but for them to be such drastically different roles and movies.
It's incredibly exciting. I've always wanted opportunities that are kind of exemplified in both these films. You know, one obviously to be the lead, which is the kind of where you kind of work every day and you kind of track the whole kind of meaning of the film. But also the two different roles, one which is, I guess, a romantic comedy or an offbeat comedy, and one that is a pretty dark drama. It's fun. I mean, as a comedian, I feel as though comedians are kind of spoiled by the immediacy to their art. Like if I come up with an idea, I could go and try it tonight. In a club, whereas in acting opportunities like in these two films, it's taken 30 years, and they're landing the same week at the LA Film Festival. I don't know what that means necessarily. There are so many festivals,
yeah,
but I think this is the most important festival now.
Of course, it's basically the Oscars of film festivals.
It is,
right? And you're in two movies.
I'm very excited.
So I want to start with American Dreamer because
Okay.
it's such a departure from what people, I think, expect from you. Just to start off, how have you been describing it to people? Because it's a little hard to describe.
Well, it's I haven't really had the opportunity to describe it
Well,
to
here you
many
go.
people, but it is. I think story-wise, it's about someone who kind of is trying to find their way through life. But I think it's indirectly kind of a commentary on, and I'm reluctant to say this because I want people to get their own kind of takeaway, but I do feel like it's a commentary on the entitlement that some white guys kind of feel entitled to. Like this guy is, he plays kind of like an Uber Lyft driver who's had some bad luck. He had the white collar job. And instead of looking at his own problems, he's kind of looking for that quick fix to get out of it. And that's kind of what motivates him. But it's also a film about just bad decision making,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I personally haven't seen it. I'm going to see it
Okay.
Thursday night. But, when you're the lead of something, and obviously the director was very, we communicated a lot about tone and stuff like that. But it could look different, than what I thought. But it's a pretty amazing opportunity. I don't know if I answered a question.
Well, I mean, the important thing about this film is you kidnap a child.
I'm always reluctant to.
I'm not sure if you want people to know that, but
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, it's out there now, but, this guy is trying to kind of piece his life together in the easiest, selfish way. He doesn't set out to do that. It's not, like all the motivations of my character are not kind of evil, but maybe they're a little dim-witted, but like, hopefully you see him justify these actions. And it's not for comedic effect. It's it's like, oh, dude, don't do that. Don't do that. But you can see some of it's in the script, the reasoning behind his actions. So he doesn't set out to kidnap a child. He doesn't set out to do a lot of the things he does in the movie. And particularly by the end, you realize, he didn't have to do any of these things, but he kind of feels like he can, and he kind of, and there's something of, I don't want to give away the ending, but there's something to be said for, does he get away with it? And why does he get away with it? That's where I think, when I talk about the entitlement thing, where you kind of get a sense of like, oh shit, maybe he did.
Yeah. Given that it is such a departure for you and it is such a dark role, what drew you to it? What made you say, yeah, I'd like to play this cab driver who kidnaps this child?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm a complex, person.
Multi-layered.
Yeah, with different shades. I mean, I'm mostly pale, but so, I mean, the more complex the character, the more fun it is as an acting opportunity, right? But, yeah, I mean, it's weird because I think that the entertainment industry, there is something of you got to show me what you can do. So I was excited to play the role, but I was also excited because as a result of this, now people will see that I can do this. I also understand that, there are some comedians that really love acting, and then there's a lot of comedians that don't care. I mean, I am one of those that really enjoys acting. So I like the opportunity to prove that I can act too.
Not only is it a dark role, but from what I've seen in it, you're playing intimidating, which I don't think is really what people, think of when they think of you. But you're a bigger guy. You played football in college. Did you always know that you could play intimidating if you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, well, if any of my children were here, they'd say I'm intimidating. It is weird. It's a perception business we're in, right? So, the fact you mentioned that I played football in college, and I was an athlete, but I think because I'm a white bread guy and maybe I have a whiny Midwestern voice, people assume. Like, people are always shocked that I'm in real life. I'm actually 8 feet tall.
Yes,
a lot of people don't realize that.
You should see how big his chair is.
But But I'm actually sitting on the ground right
It's
now.
absurd.
That's what a lot of
It's
people don't
actually
realize. But no, so it's a strange journey, this perception business. So in some ways you can't control it. So like opportunities like American Dream are great because you can show a different side. But I mean, I don't think I'm the monster that's portrayed in American Dreamer, but I think everyone has a dark side. I mean, especially you. You have a very dark side.
Right before this.
We're going to find out you're a murderer, right?
Yeah, like during this interview.
Yeah.
You're gonna
during the interview.
You're going to drag it out of me.
Why? Is that why you have a chainsaw under your
All right,
chair?
fine.
I mean, it's weird because I'm sitting on the ground. That's why.
It's going to be weird. It's going to be very weird.
By the way, I'm in a fat suit right now. A lot of people don't realize that. I'm actually incredibly...
That's why you showed up so early. We had to put the fat suit on you.
They're like, all this, it's a little bit like...
All this hoopla.
Yeah.
Moving on, past your fat suit, to sort of piggyback off of what you were just saying, what's something that you relate to in the character? Because you mentioned you're not this person, but what's something that you sort of were like, oh, I understand that, or I get that motivation?
I think that a lot of men are, immature. I think that.
That's fair.
Like there's this Ben Folds song, "Still Fighting It," which I think is he's singing about his son. But I think a lot of men, and I see it in my sons, it's like women are just more equipped for the trials and tribulations, like navigating disappointment and failure. And so obviously I didn't react like Cam did with some of my failures, but I think that getting angry about things I can't control is absurd, but I still get angry about them. Yeah. And I think that that's not to say that women don't also, but I think that immaturity, like I think men just kind of struggle to hold it together more. It's no mistake that most serial killers are men. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
That's just a fact.
Right. We're just these orangutans.
Serial killing
right.
orangutans.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's not it's not too foreign from who we are, especially you. I mean, you obviously.
I swear. I think
you
we
have
have
a
like
dark
20
side.
minutes. We have like 10 minutes left.
I think it's
swear.
weird. Why aren't you wearing pants during the interview?
I don't ever wear pants during the
Okay.
interview.
All right. I
And,
just think it's strange.
I
Can you keep your
expressly told
hands
you
on
not
the
to
table?
mention it, but
Hands on the table.
hands on the table.
Okay.
Chainsaw under the table still.
Chainsaw under the table.
When you're doing a role this dark, how do you, Jim Gaffigan, go to a dark headspace? What is your process to? There's a scene where you need to be especially intimidating, a scene where you need to be especially frantic. What do you do to get into that headspace?
I think it's not undifferent from playing a lot of different characters. Like, I'm looking at this other guy that I played.
Yeah, you're fine.
You end up, the rationalization that exists for every motivation for that character, you kind of justify in your mind. And so some of it is just, emotional mathematics in your mind, which is probably dangerous to do, where you justify just horrible behavior. But, this movie at one American Dreamer at one point was called Night because it essentially takes place at night, the entire night. And there is something dark about night. It was late at night. We were exhausted. It was really low budget. There was no trailer. You know what I mean? So like there was, like if you found some space, you could kind of sit and access it very quickly. I remember great people on this group, but like they gave me a room for, that was kind of my dressing room, and there was no chair or anything. So like to relax, I sat on the ground. You know what I mean? And which is funny, but it's also kind of like, there was something bare bones about it. There was no luxury, which was great, because you kind of use all that stuff. And I also, I have, anger inside of me and frustration. And, I've murdered people.
Yeah, who hasn't?
Who hasn't? You know what I mean? Hands on the table.
I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting the rules of this interview, of which there are none. Because the movie is such this tone, on set, were people sort of looking to you to maybe lighten things up, or were you like, hey, that's not my job on this one?
It's really interesting you bring that up, because I have, not that I have a huge library of roles, but I usually play kind of a vulnerable, incompetent person. And what usually happens over the course of shooting, whether it's on a TV show or in a movie, the crew will end up treating you like that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, this guy's a loser. And you're like, dude, I'm married to a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
I'm just playing a guy who can't get a date. So, but on this movie, it was interesting because it was a production that utilized a lot of people from Old Dominion University, like the film program at the school was used. So there was kind of this balancing act of college students who were helping, and you wanted to be like, thanks for your help, but you also wanted to be like, all right, now I'm going to go over here and kidnap a kid.
Yeah.
So it was a balancing act but it was a very small crew, and everyone was there for the right reason. I mean, that's on any kind of acting opportunity I've had, that really kind of determines a lot of the tone. Is everyone here for the right reason? Is someone here just as an ego trip, or is someone here just for a paycheck? And this film, and also, You Can Choose Your Family, everyone was there for the right reason. It's like, there's not a lot of glamour. That's the great irony of premieres, is like you sit there and everyone kind of like goes on 4 hours of sleep, and they're freezing and complaining, and they're drinking, coffee and eating crappy food. And then at the end, a couple months later, everyone dresses up and goes into a movie theater and acts like they're at prom. It's a strange thing.
Yeah, movies are weird.
They're weird.
Making movies is weird. So I do want to talk about You Can Choose Your Family, which is, it's a much lighter movie. It's a much funnier movie, but you're still playing a not so a not so great guy.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, first of all, how you've been explaining this movie to people, because this is also a very complex story.
Yeah.
And if that it was in your mind that you're moving towards this direction where you're playing these not so spectacular dudes.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but like I also feel as though you want to play someone who is complex or corrupted or has justified bad behavior. But in You Can Choose Your Family, how I describe it is this guy who's a really strict, I play a guy who's a strict father of a teenage boy in the early 90s, and the teenage boy suddenly discovers that my character has a complete second family. And it's a comedy. But the weird thing is that over the course of the movie, one of the things I was trying to do was to build some, not empathy for this guy, because he's guilty.
Yeah.
But also some humanity. So it's a human thing, because even people that do horrible things are human. And, sometimes people make horrible decisions and they kind of can't find their way out of it. As opposed to, Cam, who makes a series of bad decisions. You Can Choose Your Family, my character Frank makes one bad decision. And then probably out of cowardice, he kind of explains it, that he never got out of it. And of course, the movie kind of deals with this process of how it actually brings him closer to his teenage son. It's absurd, but it's kind of a fun ride. But, understandably, today we are in this era where you don't want to be humanizing horrible behavior, but there is something of like every story is unique. Everyone's past, our, great grandparents probably did horrible things.
Oh, yeah.
But they're still our great grandparents. And they're great. I'm not saying that's why they're great, because they did horrible things.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that you wanted to humanize him, because you couldn't really help like the character, even though he's blatantly doing one of the worst things that could happen to someone's family.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's anything specific you had in mind with how you wanted to sort of ground him, or was it just sort of an innate thing that came from your performance?
Well, some of it's, I think, innate, but I think there is, some of it's just storytelling. You see, we see it in an episode or, a 3-block episode of Game of Thrones, Suddenly we're rooting for Jaime Lannister. How's that? You know what I mean? How'd we pull that off? Yeah. And so some of it is, that's a fun ride, and there's some complexity to it. But, I don't know. I think you're kind of conscious of it, whether you're in the first act or the last act of a movie, when we were shooting the initial scene, I was definitely not trying to ham it up, but I was much more of a strict, father, as opposed to once we're exposed, warts and all, we're inevitably more vulnerable. And we can't, the whole role of being a parent, and I've got 5 kids, it is a bit of a charade. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like there's that sad moment every teenager realizes, whether they like their parents or not, when they realize, oh no, they don't know what they're doing at all.
Yeah.
And they're just acting like that. And so I think You Can Choose Your Family captures some of that in the relationship I have with Logan, and who's great in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually gonna mention that you over the years you have built up this image as just a family man. You have 5 kids, and it's a subject of your comedy. I'm wondering how that contributes to a role where that idea is actively played against, where the idea of a family man who on the outside looks like he has a family, but he's really unhappy, and he doesn't really want that. I'm wondering how your image contributed to that role.
Well, the weird thing about even the image of, again, this goes back to like almost this perception industry we're in. It's not as if, like I sat there and I go, all right, you know what kind of comedian I'm going to be?
Yeah.
I'm going to be one that doesn't curse. And I guess if I'm not going to curse, I might as well have a lot of kids. And so
It all started with that. And then it
yeah,
started
do you know what I
having
mean?
kids.
Like, it wasn't some tactical move. I mean, some of it is I come from a small town in Indiana where, I mean, I curse in everyday life. You know, I'm not afraid to say fuck or shit. It's just doesn't seem necessary if I'm talking about mini muffins.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Unless you're just really mad about
Unless,
it.
I mean, are you that angry about mini muffins? But, and so like, the being this family man, which is in the most, probably the most unsexy thing you could be, it's just a reality. I mean, it's like, I am conscious of the fact that being a father is the most important thing I'll do in my life. But, I'm far from perfect. I've murdered people.
Yeah, we've established.
I mean, you've already
that we're
murdered
both
people.
Serial killers.
I've murdered a lot of
and
people.
that you're 8 feet tall and I'm not wearing pants.
Yeah.
So we're not perfect.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of Stalin in all of us. No, I'm joking.
That's
if
going
I
to be the
wasn't
quote. That's
joking?
going to be the quote. Jim Gaffigan. There's
He's
a little bit
pro-Stalin.
Pro-Stalin. Exactly. It's interesting because the relationship between, I'm sure you know this very well, the relationship between a father and a son is a very distinct thing. And I'm wondering how you find that chemistry with essentially a stranger, with an actor, on a film.
It's, it is, I mean, it's an absurd relationship, obviously, and there's varying forms of it, but particularly with Logan, who is kind of, I would say he has a maturity. The irony is he's the most immature person I know, but he has a confidence and an ease that makes him comfortable with, a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old. That ease made it so, over the course of the movie where we connected and there was a camaraderie and we could kind of improvise. That was easy at the back end of the movie, but like playing difficult and constrained by poor communication between a father and son, that was something. I'm kind of grateful we shot that at the beginning because Logan and I were having so much fun, and he really is a joy to work with. So it's like, I didn't want to appear like I was acting like I was angry at him. I wanted to be angry at him.
Yeah.
And I was.
Even though both of these movies are so completely different, they all really, at their core, are about family. They're about the importance of family. And I'm wondering, for you, who has talked about family so much over your career, what it is specifically about family that is always going to be so ripe for both drama and comedy.
Well, I think that as humans, we tend to forget this, but no matter how successful you are, or whether you struggled in your job, or whether you're in jail or you're a murderer like you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
In the end, the relationships you have with your children or your parents, I mean, those are probably going to be the last thoughts, right? It's like, in the end, it's like that Cats in the Cradle song is kind of something that's kind of important. It's weird. I don't think that culturally we, and believe me, I'm not sitting there going, the family is so important. I'm just saying, from my view, in the end, that's how things are evaluated. Like when you're, if you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be, your agent might be there, but it's probably your wife or your mother or your children or your children's children, in my case. You don't know, so it's weird. I mean, family is, there's nothing more. It's like all of Greek mythology. That's all family, isn't it?
In several different ways.
Yeah.
But you're in these two movies. You have plenty on your slate coming up, but you're still doing stand-up comedy as well.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's a feeling you have, or how do you know when it's time to get back on the stage, or how do you decide when it's time to get back up on a stand-up stage?
Well, for me, I was, my wife had this brain tumor, like not last April, but the April before, and going through that, I was faced to deal with this reality that, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be this single father of 5 children, and then thankfully she came back, and everything's okay. And so I think I have this, I always love doing stand-up, and it's in some ways it's my antidepressant. Like, if I don't do it, people are like, you gotta go. My wife's like, you gotta go on stage. But like, the fact that there was the possibility that I wouldn't be able to do it anymore, because you can't tour 100 days a year if you have 5 young children. The fact that it was, like, I have a greater appreciation for it now, but like, for me, there's not this time where I stop doing it. It's kind of ongoing, and coming up with a new joke is incredibly rewarding. I have this special that came out in July, Noble Ape, but the material I'm touring with now is new. But it's just this ongoing thing where it's probably how like runners feel about running, which obviously doesn't apply
I'll take
to me.
your word for it.
it's like they have to do it, and so it's amazing. It's like the creative outlet is, in the end, it's all about creative fulfillment, and that's why I do think that these smaller indie films are so fun, because I said before, everyone's there for the right reasons, but it's also having executive produced my own show with my wife, and written episodes of my own show. It's like, I've been on the other side, so all I want to do when I'm on a film set is be the good soldier, like identify what the director and what the producers want, and just not be a headache. It's like, because I've had that experience. I know that's a bit of a tangent, but
Fine with me.
yeah.
Finally, I just want to ask that you can choose your family is set in 1992.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you were up to in 1992, and whether at that point you pictured your career heading to where you are today.
1992, I had been doing stand-up for, I don't know, I guess a year. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
When were you born?
1992.
Wow. So unbelievable, right? So I've got a funny story if you want to hear this story.
I do. I very much.
All right. So I was doing this this benefit show in Philadelphia for this hospital. And Carole King was on the show. And Carole King's, my oldest sister was obsessed with Carole King, but Carole King was amazing. So I show up at this fancy event, and I learned later on it's one of the preeminent social events in Philly. And so I went backstage, and there was a woman there she looked like she was in her 30s, early 30s. And she was like, oh my gosh, I went to the same college as you. And I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. You went to the same college. And she said, yeah. And she goes, what year did you graduate? And I go, well, I'm older, but I graduated in 1988. And she goes, oh my gosh, that's the year I was born. And I was like, it's like, but you're the same, aren't we the same age? Anyway, so what was the question that I didn't answer? What was I doing in 92?
What were you doing in 92, and whether you saw yourself?
Oh, I was, the first couple times I did stand up, I did well, or okay, meaning the first 2 times. And then I really struggled. Like, I did not have a performance background. I just went to a friend's son's bar mitzvah, and I was like, man, if I had a bar mitzvah You know, it's like if I had that confidence at 13. So I essentially, in 1992, I was probably in the first year of 3 years of bombing on stage, just trying to find confidence on stage and figuring out what type of comic I was. In the end, I ended up being the comic I thought I was at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's a full circle.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You can Choose Your Family and American Dreamer both premiering at the LA Film Festival.
And you can put your pants on.
I'm not going to.
Don't put your pants on.
I'm not going to put my pants on.
This is the Alex Jones Show. Collider. We're colliding two movies. That's a bad impression of him. Thank you
that's
so
about
much.
as good as it can get. Thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it.
Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. If you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.